Daman had been walking the forest path for nearly an hour when the rain started. It was a punishing downpour that turned the red earth to mud beneath his feet. He pulled his rain jacket tighter and quickened his pace. He cursed his wretched boss responsible for his delayed departure from the timber yard where he worked. His grandmother's funeral was tomorrow, and he'd promised his mother he'd be there before nightfall. The old woman had raised him along with his mother after his father died in a farming accident, filling his childhood with stories whispered in Kasi, tales of Thlen, the serpent demon who demanded blood, and the hollow-eyed servants who fed him. Tales he didn't want to think of as he traversed the tree-lined path. Lightning cracked open timber somewhere in the depths of the forest. The rain had become unbearable, and the angry storm gods were threatening to scorch anything foolish enough to wander the earth. He badly needed to find shelter. He nearly missed the house. It sat back from the path, barely visible through the rain, a traditional Khasi home with a corrugated tin roof. Warm light glowed from the windows. He knocked. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 60s, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a traditional jainsam, and her smile seemed genuine enough. "Please," she said in Khasi, "you are soaked through. Come and warm yourself." The interior was sparse but clean. A wood fire crackled in a stone hearth. The smell of rice cooking filled the air, oddly pungent with an undertone of something sweet and medicinal. Turmeric, perhaps. "I'm Barilyn," the woman said. "You're going to Smith." "My grandmother's funeral," Damon replied, accepting the towel she offered. "Ah, who was she?" "Marielyn Kongwir." Something flickered across her face. "I knew her. Very strong spirit." Damon was not surprised. His grandmother was a midwife and well known in these parts. "You have her eyes, you know," she said, smiling. She turned and approached the pot, opened its lid, and ladled rice into a bowl. "You must eat," she said, extending it towards him. Damon remembered one of his grandmother's superstitious refrains. Never eat rice offered by strangers in these hills. Never. He was tempted to get rid of the gnawing hunger in his belly. But superstition or not, he trusted his grandmother's wisdom. "I'm not hungry, thank you," he lied. "But you must eat." Barilyn moved closer, the bowl extended. The rice glistened unnaturally, each grain seeming to catch the firelight. "Your grandmother would want you to keep your strength up." "Really, I insist." Her voice had gone flat. Her eyes, too, they had lost their warmth, becoming dark pools that reflected nothing. "It's special rice. Aged, very rare." She suddenly blew the steam rising from the dish onto his nostrils. Damon's heart began to hammer as he stepped back. The smell wasn't turmeric. It was something else, something that made his head swim and his limbs feel heavy. He stepped backward toward the door. "You know," Barilyn said, setting down the bowl, "your grandmother cost me dearly. She had such a strong connection to the spirit world, that black magic woman. When I sent my servant to kill her husband 40 years ago, he ran away, saying your grandfather looked like thick whips swinging through the air. My servant came back to me, useless and terrified." "I don't know what you're talking about." Damon's hand found the door handle behind him. It didn't budge. "Your grandfather lived another 10 years before I finally got him. Do you know how much blood that is? How much prosperity I lost?" She moved to a small altar in the corner. In the dancing firelight, Damon could see what sat there, a writhing shadow that seemed to coil upon itself, never quite solid, never quite smoke. "But Thlen is patient, and your grandmother is dead now. Her bloodline, however..." Daman yanked the door handle. It didn't budge. He yanked again, panic rising in his throat. The wood groaned, but held fast. Behind him, Baralin's chanting grew louder. On the third desperate pull, the door finally flew open, and he ran. The rain had stopped, but the forest had grown darker, the path ahead swallowed by shadows. Behind him, he heard Baralin's voice rise in a rhythmic chant, words in a dialect of Khasi he didn't recognize. Then he heard the footsteps. They came fast, impossibly fast, crashing through the undergrowth. Damon risked a glance back and saw him. A man, or what had been a man, eyes vacant and gleaming, mouth slack. In one hand, he gripped something that glinted silver. The words and ideas from his grandmother's stories flooded back. A nongshono, a person turned into a mindless killer by demon's brew, bound to serve a keeper of Thlen. The stories were real. A scatter of grains pelted his back and shoulders. Enchanted rice. Damon's lungs burned as he ran, his dress shoes slipping on wet leaves. The footsteps grew closer. He could hear breathing now, ragged and desperate, like a wounded animal. The chanting followed, carried on the wind, wrapping around him like chains. Damon felt his legs grow heavy, his thoughts turning sluggish. The paralysis was spreading from where the rice had touched him. Quick-minded, his grandmother used to tell him. Be quick-minded. His knees buckled. He fell forward, hands plunging into the wet earth. Behind him, the nongshono's footsteps slowed to a walk. Silver scissors clicked open. Damon's fingers closed around mud. His grandmother's voice echoed through the fog, creeping into his mind. A clod of dirt in the mouth. Connection to Mother Earth. He tried to lift his hand, tried to bring the earth to his lips. His arm wouldn't move. The paralysis had spread too far, too fast. Whatever was in that rice, whatever demon sweat-filled aged liquor had created this servant, it was all powerful. The nongshono knelt beside him with the mechanical efficiency of something that had done this 100 times before. Damon could see his face now. A young man, maybe 25, with tears streaming silently down his cheeks, even as his hands moved with terrible purpose. "I'm sorry," the young man whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry, I can't stop, I can't—" The silver scissors flashed. Daman felt a cold pressure against his scalp, then the sickening sensation of hair being cut away in thick clumps. The young man's hands trembled violently, but they didn't stop, couldn't stop. "Please," Damon tried to say, but his tongue was lead in his mouth. The scissors moved to his hand. One finger at a time, he felt the blades close around his fingernails. The pain was immediate and blinding. A white-hot agony that shot up his arm as each nail was clipped away, taking bits of flesh with it. Blood welled up, running down his fingers in hot rivulets. The nongshono collected each nail carefully in a small bamboo container, his own face contorted in anguish, even as he worked. "I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to—" The words became a mantra, meaningless sounds to accompany the horror. Then came the knife. It was small and silver, gleaming in the moonlight that had broken through the clouds. "Your nostrils," he sobbed. "I have to cut off your nostrils. Please forgive me. Please." The blade pressed against Damon's face. He felt it slice into the soft cartilage, felt the warm gush of blood pour down his face and into his paralyzed mouth. The coppery taste mixed with rain made him retch. The pain became more excruciating with each second as the knife carved through flesh. The nongshono cut like an untrained butcher, severing the tissue and collecting the bloody artifacts in his bamboo container. Damon's vision blurred red. He could hear his own blood dripping onto the leaves like rain. Almost done, the young man whispered, his tears mixing with Daman's blood on his hands. Almost done, and then I kill you fast. I promise. I promise I'll make it fast. He set down the bamboo container and picked up the knife again, this time gripping it differently. A killing grip. But then something changed. The young man's hand stopped mid-air. His eyes, which had been vacant and glazed, suddenly focused with terrible clarity. For just a moment, perhaps because Damon's blood had touched him, perhaps because some small crack had formed in Barolin's control, the Nongshono saw what he was doing, really saw it. His scream shattered the night. It was raw and broken, the sound of a soul tearing itself apart. He looked down at his blood-covered hands, at the mutilated man before him, and the full weight of all that he had done to his victims, past and present, crashed down at once. "What have I done?" he wailed. "What have I done? What have I—" The knife turned inward. Damon watched through the haze of pain as the young man plunged the silver blade into his own throat. Blood sprayed in a dark arc, painting the trees. The Nongshono clawed at the wound, gurgling, his eyes locked on Damon's with desperate apology. And then he collapsed beside him. They lay there together in the mud, killer and victim, both bleeding out beneath the indifferent stars. Damon felt the paralysis beginning to fade, but too slowly. His blood continued to pool around him, mixing with the young man's, soaking into the earth that was supposed to save him. The last thing he heard was footsteps approaching through the forest, slow, measured steps. Barolin emerged from the shadows, clicking her tongue in disapproval. She knelt down and picked up the bamboo container, examining its contents with satisfaction. "Weak-minded fool," she muttered, glancing at her dead servant. Then she looked at Daman, who was still conscious, still aware, trapped in his dying body. She smiled. "But he did the important work. Strong blood, this. Your grandmother's bloodline. Thlen will feast well tonight." She produced a small silver knife from her own pocket. "Now then," she said gently, almost kindly, "let's finish what he started." 3 days later, they found 2 bodies on the forest path, a young man from Smith village and an unidentified victim. The police report noted the ritualistic mutilation. The newspapers called it superstition-driven violence. An angry mob formed, searching for the mythical keepers of Thlen. Someone ratted on the old woman. They never found Barolin. But in the village, certain families grew inexplicably wealthier.